Yeah, it's on screen. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Minartin Building and today's session with Dr. Jane Goodall, a conversation with Dr. Jane Goodall, Science, Ethics, and Policy. This is Dr. Evren Tok speaking, Associate Dean for Community Engagement at College of Public Policy. We are so honored to have you with us today. Welcome. I always believed that the day when I defended my PhD was the most exciting day of my life, but with today, it changed. Today is the most exciting day of my life. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the founding dean of College of Public Policy, Professor Lester Pell, to do the introductions.
Thank you, Dr. Tok. Well, it's a great honor to welcome Dr. Jane Goodall here to HBKU and the Qatar Foundation and to Education City. This event is being co-hosted by three of the colleges here at HBKU, the College of Public Policy, the College of Islamic Studies, and the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. And we've been very happy to reach out to our sister colleges and institutes, as well as partner institutions here at QF and to the wider community. And it's wonderful to see this turnout. I'm sorry for the folks that have to sit on the steps, but thank you very much for tolerating that. There's a cliche about introducing someone who needs no introduction, but our guest in this case actually embodies that cliche. Rather than a resume or which would be hopelessly inadequate given her accomplishments and influence, let me just use some key words that we all know capture at least some of her character and work. Scientist, researcher, pioneer, advocate, guardian, thought leader, and philanthropist. And those are just a few of the words. I could go on with many more. She was 26 years old when she went into the Gombe jungle to study chimpanzees in the wild. And as a result of that, she changed our understanding of primates and of ourselves, I think, forever. She is here with us today, and her work and contributions continue to inform and challenge us. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Jane Goodall.
Well, what is it? Still good morning? Yes, good morning, everyone. It feels like almost the evening. My day's been so busy. But anyway, good morning to all of you. And I'm just going to do something that's never been done in this space before. I'm going to greet you as though you were out in the Gombe jungles. Chimpanzee, me, Jane. And every chimpanzee has his or her own voice, so you know who's calling. But in a nutshell, I want to try and be quick so there's time for your questions. But, you know, how did I get to be who I am with all these words that you read out? And so I want to say that I was born loving animals. I was very fortunate in having a fantastic mother. And the key thing, she was supportive. She supported my love for animals. She didn't even get mad when I was 1.5, and she found I'd taken a whole handful of earth and earthworms to bed with me. She said, "Jane, you looked as though you were intently watching, wondering, how do they walk without legs?" Anyway, so this love of animals and nature started right from the very beginning and was supported by my mother. When I was growing up, there was no television, hadn't been invented. So there was nature, books, and listening to wise elders. That's how I learned. And I loved books. When I was 10 years old, we had very little money. World War II was raging. And I used to save up my pocket money and spend hours every weekend in a little second-hand bookshop that I found. And I found this little tiny book, a sort of very cheap edition of Tarzan of the Apes. Just had enough money to buy it, took it home, climbed my favorite tree and read it from cover to cover, fell passionately in love with Tarzan, was very jealous because he married the wrong Jane. Well, he did. And anyway, that was when my dream began. I knew there wasn't a Tarzan, but I will grow up, go to Africa, live with wild animals and write books about them. No thought of being a scientist. Girls certainly didn't do that sort of thing back then. Everybody laughed at me. How will you do that? I mean, you don't have money, Africa's far away, it's dangerous, and you're just a girl. Not my mother. She said, Jane, if you really want to do something like this, you're going to have to work really hard, take advantage of every opportunity, and if you don't give up, hopefully you find a way. So I was really good at school, came second or third in all the exams, except foreign languages. I was hopeless at that. I didn't even know chimpanzee back then. But we didn't have money for university, so all my friends went off to university, just as they'd gone skiing every holiday to Switzerland or something. We couldn't afford that. So I had to get a job, boring old secretarial, just had enough money for a secretarial course. Got a job in London, then opportunity, school friend, her parents had moved to Kenya, she invited me for a holiday. Had to work as a waitress to get the money to go. It was by boat, and we should have gone through the Suez Canal, if you know your geography, and to Mombasa in Kenya, because there weren't planes back then. I mean, there were a few, but they were too expensive, so it was by boat. It was a war between Britain and Egypt, no idea what it was about. Suez Canal was closed. To go all the way around Africa, it took about a month. First place I set foot on African soil was Cape Town. And it was so exciting. There I was in Cape Town with the iconic Table Mountain. My mother had a couple of friends there who said, well, we'll take Jane and show her around while the boat's in dock. And it was lovely until I saw on the backs of all the seats and the doors to the hotels and restaurants these Afrikaans words, sex blank. I said, what do these words mean? White people only. So then I didn't want to be there anymore because I wasn't brought up that way. My grandfather was a congregational minister. We didn't judge people by the color of their skin. So I couldn't wait to move on. Got to Kenya, it was much better. It was about to become independent from British colonial rule. And I stayed with my friend, heard about Dr. Louis Leakey, famous anthropologist, paleontologist, went to see him. He was curator of the Natural History Museum. And to cut a long story short, he gave me a job. His secretary had left just 2 weeks before I met him. He needed a secretary, and there I was. So that boring old secretarial course took me into a world where all my questions about the mammals, the birds, the reptiles, the plants of Africa could be answered. And it was because he took me on a safari to Olduvai Gorge, now a very famous fossil site, and he liked the way I reacted when I was allowed out in the evening. One evening I met a rhino, another evening was a young male lion, and he felt that I reacted in just the right way and offered me this amazing opportunity to go and live with and learn from not just any animal, but the one most like us, the chimpanzee. We didn't even know back then how biologically similar, like we share 98.6% of the structure of our DNA with chimpanzees. And it took a year to get the money because, you know, I hadn't been to college. Who was going to give money for this young English girl? But finally, 6 months from a philanthropist in America who said, all right, we'll see how she can do. Well, for 4 months, the chimpanzees ran away from me. And I was getting more and more depressed because I knew if I didn't see something exciting, I mean, I was looking through my binoculars, but I wasn't really learning anything much. And then on that never-to-be-forgotten day, when I saw the one chimp who'd begun to lose his fear of me, crouched on a termite mound and using grass stems as tools to fish for termites, breaking off leafy twigs and having to strip the leaves and side twigs off to make it into a tool. So David Greybeard, as I named him, he had a beautiful white beard, was using and making tools. It wouldn't be exciting if you saw an animal do that now. Back then, it certainly was, because science had decided humans and only humans could use and make tools. In fact, we were defined as man the tool maker. So when Louis Leakey heard about this, I sent him a telegram. He said, now we must redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as humans. Anyhow, that brought in the National Geographic Society, and they said they'd provide money so I could continue with the research when the 6-month grant came to an end. And I began to learn about the chimpanzees, the different individuals making up a community, the complex social society, the fact that they have distinct personalities, but also they use objects in different ways as tools for different purposes. And then communicating with, kissing, embracing, holding hands, patting one another, swaggering, shaking their fists, males competing for dominance, just, swaggering from foot to foot upright, reminding me of some human male politicians, very much. And they, to my shock, have a dark, brutal side. They're capable of violence and even a kind of primitive warfare, but they're also capable of love, compassion, and altruism. Many, many stories, no time for them, but I've written about them in books anyway. So I'd been with them about 2 years when I get a letter from Leakey saying I have to go to Cambridge University to get a PhD, even though I hadn't got an undergraduate degree. And you can imagine I was a bit nervous, but imagine what I felt like when I was told I'd done everything wrong. Chimps should have had numbers, not names. That was not scientific to name them. I couldn't talk about their personalities. I couldn't talk about them having minds capable of solving problems. I certainly couldn't talk about them having emotions like happiness, sadness, fear, despair. Why? Because those were unique to humans. Well, fortunately, when I was a child, I'd had a wonderful teacher. A teacher who taught me that in this respect, these erudite professors were completely wrong. That teacher was my dog, Rusty. You can't share your life in a meaningful way with a dog, a cat, a camel, a horse, I don't care what it is, and not know that we are not the only sentient, sapient beings on the planet. And gradually, because my, photographer who came out to make documentary films, who I eventually married, but his film began coming around, and the scientists were forced to admit that everything I had said was true, although at the beginning, many of them said, well, why should we believe this young girl? She's only, famous because she got on the cover of the Geographic, because she's got decent legs. That's what they were saying, which of course now would be shocking, but back then I thought, well, if it's true, then thank you, legs. Anyway, so I eventually got my PhD. I went back, built up a little research station, and I could spend hours out in the rainforest and learning about the complex ecosystem where every little plant and animal, as well as the big trees and the big animals, have a role to play, and everything is interconnected in this beautiful living tapestry. And they were the best days of my life. So why did I leave? I left in 1986, having gone in 1960, because at a big conference that I actually helped to plan, by then there were 6 other chimp field study sites. When I began, it was just me. And we wanted to bring the researchers together to see how chimp behavior differed, if it did differ from one environment to another, which behavior was so innately chimpanzee that we found it everywhere. But during that conference, we had a session on conservation, and it was shocking. Everywhere, forests were disappearing, chimpanzee numbers were dropping. There was the bushmeat trade, the commercial hunting of wild animals for food, shooting of mothers to steal their babies to sell in the international market, still going on today, by the way. And we also had a session on conditions in some captive situations, like the cruel training of chimps for entertainment, the keeping of chimpanzees as pets when they should not be pets, and medical research, our closest relatives in 5-foot by 5-foot cages with nothing, maybe a motor tire if they were lucky, because their bodies are so like ours that they were exploited by scientists trying to find cures or vaccines for diseases which other animals less like us could not be infected with, by scientists who refused to accept the equally striking psychological and behavioral similarities. So I went to that conference, which was 4 days, as a scientist. I left as an activist. I knew I had to do something. I had no idea what to do. Started a long fight to first improve and then remove chimpanzees from medical research, because in the end it was proven that the research had not been useful to us and is not being useful to us, so they're all retired to sanctuaries. But Africa, I got together a bit of money, visited the 6 other research sites, learned a great deal about what was happening to the chimps, but at the same time, I learned a lot about what was happening to many of the African people living in and around chimp habitat, the crippling poverty, the lack of good health and education facilities, the degradation of the land as their families grew and as they moved further and further into chimpanzee habitat. And it came to a head when I flew over the tiny Gombe National Park, where, by the way, the chimp research is still going on, 3 years later. And what had been part of a great equatorial forest belt in 1960, by the late 1980s, when I flew over, it was just a little island of forest surrounded by bare hills, where there were more people living than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere, struggling to survive, cutting down the trees because they were desperate to make more land to grow more food or to make some money from charcoal or timber. And that's when it hit me. If we don't help these people find a way of making a living without destroying their environment, we can't save chimps, forests, or anything else. And so the Jane Goodall Institute in Tanzania started a program, Take Care, or Takari as it's known. And maybe later, if people are interested, we've just produced a book about the Takari method, which is our method of community-led conservation. So it wasn't a group of arrogant white people going into the 12 small villages around Gombe National Park. It was 7 carefully selected local people who went into the villages and sat there and asked the people, what do you think we can do to make your lives better? And it's a very holistic program, which ranges from restoring fertility to the overused farmland without chemical pesticides and herbicides, to improving the health and education systems, working with the local Tanzanian government, scholarships to give girls a chance of secondary education. They had very little chance back then. Microfinance programs so that people could start their own environmentally sustainable small businesses, and family planning information. All of this was so successful that that program is now in 104 villages throughout Chimp Range in Tanzania, and it's in 6 other African countries. So it's making a big difference. And by this time, I was traveling the world, talking about the problems faced in Africa, learning more and more about the problems that we are inflicting on the planet around the world that's led to climate change, loss of biodiversity, and so on. And of course, keeping the Tokhari program and the Gombe research going was costing money. And so I was also raising funds, or trying to. And as I was traveling, and this was all around the world, I was meeting young people who seemed already, back then in the late 80s, to be losing hope. I found that they were depressed, they were angry, or mostly just apathetic, not seeming to care. And when I talked to them and asked them, why do you feel this way? The answer from all around the world was more or less the same: because you have compromised our future and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, we have. And it's not just that we've compromised the future of young people, we've actually been stealing it, probably since the Industrial Revolution. But when they said there was nothing they could do about it, I thought, no, it's not too late. There's a window of time. And if we get together and tackle the problems that we've caused, we can at least slow down climate change, slow down the loss of species. And so that's when our program for young people began, Roots and Shoots. It began with 12 high school students in Tanzania. They came worried about all kinds of different projects, came from 8 different schools, and they wanted me to solve all these problems. Things like homelessness, things like poaching of animals in the national parks, things like illegal dynamiting for fish, which was destroying the coral reefs. And so I told them, get your friends together who also care. And we had a meeting, about 30 people, I think. And that's when Roots and Shoots was born, and we decided the main message of Roots and Shoots, which is a message for all of us, is that every single day we spend on this planet, we make some impact, and we get to choose what sort of impact we make. We decided that each group would choose 3 projects to make the world better: 1 to help people, 1 to help animals, 1 to help the environment, because of everything being interconnected. And Roots and Shoots is now in this is the 87th country. We just formed 1 group this morning in the British school. And it's got hundreds and thousands of young people, members from kindergarten through university, even more and more adults wanting to form groups, like the staff of major corporations, for example. And these young people, they sit down, they choose projects to make the world better. They roll up their sleeves, they get out there, and they take action. They're my greatest reason for hope in a world where people are increasingly losing hope. And my other reasons, the resilience of nature. Give nature a chance, and she will come back and once again clothe places we've destroyed. So there aren't any more bare hills around Gombe. The forests have come back. Animals on the brink of extinction, like the Arabian oryx. I'm just going to see the breeding program. They were extinct in the wild at one point. And there are so many animals, birds and plants that have been rescued from the very brink of extinction. And then there's this intellect. This makes us more different from chimps and other animals than anything else. We haven't always used it wisely. Animals are way more intelligent than we used to think, way more, right down from not just the apes and the monkeys and the whales and the elephants, but the birds, and then going down to the incredible octopus. I don't know if you've seen My Octopus Teacher. I see some heads nodding. But, you know, I mean, our intelligence is different, our intellect rather. We've designed a rocket that goes up to Mars with a robot that takes photographs of the surface of the red planet. And unfortunately, we've used our intellect to develop weapons of mass destruction. That's going on around the world today, particularly between Russia and Ukraine. But we're beginning to use it for good. We're beginning to use it for alternative energy like solar and wind and even the tides. We're beginning to use it to design machines that suck CO2 out of the atmosphere. And in our individual lives, we're beginning to use it to think about how we behave, to understand the value of moving towards a plant-based diet because of the tremendous damage inflicted on the natural world and biodiversity as a result of the billions of animals bred for food in factory farms. And then my final reason for hope is the indomitable spirit. People who tackle what seems impossible and won't give up and so often succeed. So those are my reasons for hope. I'm here, hopefully, to start the Roots and Shoots program. We've, as I say, started it in the British school. It's really powerful when it's in university. So that's the message I have for you. And now there's time for questions, I hope.
Special thanks to Dr. Jane Goodall for this wonderful talk. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Duygu Sevar Mehmetoğlu, one of our postdoc researchers working on education for sustainable development. She'll be moderating the Q&A session.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Thank you, Dr. Goodall, for your talk, which had lots of insights regarding our relationship as the human beings with the nature and animals. And I have to confess that I'm no exception to the people that you touched with your story. As a researcher on sustainable development, as a woman, as a dreamer, I've been inspired a lot by your story, and it's my great honor to be with you here today. And I would like to open the floor for your questions. We have many young participants, so we would really love to hear from them. I know that they would have burning questions. So I'll be passing the mic to you. My humble suggestion would be to have brief and clear questions so that we can cover as many as we can. Kindly introduce yourselves, your school, and your question, of course. Who would like to go first? Yes, please.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Hannah, and my question to you is, who became your closest chimp? A lady chimp or a boy or a girl chimp?
Sorry, what?
Who became your closest friend? A chimp boy or a girl?
Among the chimps that you interacted?
When you interacted?
David Greybeard, the one who first lost his fear of me, but also there was the old female Flo. I got very, very close to her, and her son Figan, her daughter Fifi. I mean, at that time, I knew those chimps like members of my own family. They're all gone but two now. And so the current chimpanzees at Gombe, I don't know them.
Dr. Goodall, maybe just to encourage our young participants a little bit more, I see that you have a lot of emphasis on the notion of hope and the youth, right? Do you have some tips or advice for the young students that we have here today so that they can be more active for nature, for animals?
Well, if they just join Roots and Shoots, I mean, that's what I'm here for. And I want to introduce Tara Golshan. Tara, stand up. Tara is responsible for Roots and Shoots in the UK and in this part of the world. And she will be coming back, and she can answer any question about how to get involved. But basically, you get involved by sitting with a group of your friends and colleagues and working out what you care about and what you could do about what you care about and how you do it, and rolling up your sleeves and taking action.
Thank you. There was a question over there. Kindly introduce yourself. Yeah, on the back, on the stairs. On the stairs.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, doctor. My name is Adam. Oh, this is nice. Okay, I'm actually in university in Turkey, but I came here because of the earthquake. My lessons are online right now, and I had the chance to see you. It's amazing to see you, by the way. I love you, and I love your message of hope. And you're just beautiful, by the way. My question would be about your books. I heard that you wrote some books about hope, and to me, the idea of hope, it's such an important message for us to change the way we think. This is so deep to me. My question for you is, when did this message of hope came to you, and when did you start to implement it? When did you start to inspire people about this message? Was there a specific moment in your life that you said, okay, right now this is such an important thing, I'm going to start to use it, and I'm going to start to tell people about it? So do you have any comments on that, Doctor?
Well, yes, it's basically what I said. It was when I met so many young people who had lost or were losing hope. And I thought, well, you know, it's not too late. And the most important message I can give today, as things have got worse and worse and worse, is there is still hope. But it's a window of time, and the window is still closing. And we are still damaging the environment. And we cannot expect to continue with business as usual on a planet with finite natural resources and a growing human population. We must think of making change in the way that we live. So it's hope, but with a but. There's hope if we get together and take action. And that's my main goal for the rest of my life. I don't know how many years I have. You know, I'll be 90 next year. So I don't know. But anyway, for as long as I live, I will try to give people hope, because without hope, you fall into apathy. And if we fall into apathy and do nothing, we are doomed. And if our young people fall into apathy, it's the end. And so it's really important for everybody here who's young to know that it's up to you to get together with help from us, because we're the ones who destroyed the world, not you.
There was another, maybe I should stand up so that I can see you. There was a question there, yes. Please introduce yourself and your school.
Hello, I'm Aljud Jabbar, and I'm from Al-Maha Academy for Girls. I would love to ask you if you have any favorite memories other than the first time a chimpanzee was fearless of you? Like any favorite memory with a chimpanzee other than the first time they were fearless?
Other than your first encounter with them, with the chimpanzees, do you have a favorite memory with them, one that you cannot forget?
Well, I can never forget when Flo's infant Flint came up, and Flo was still nervous, and she had a little pout on her face, and she had her hand under him, but she let him approach, and he's got these big wide eyes of a young chimp. He's about 5 months old, just tottering, and he looks up at me, and he reaches out and touches my nose. And that was a very, very special moment for two reasons. One, seeing this curiosity in another species, and two, the fact that his mother had come to trust me enough to let her precious child approach. There's many special moments, but I haven't got time to tell them all.
Thank you.
That's so special. We have another question here.
Good morning. My name is Yarbal from International School of London. And my question is, what is the key to connecting with chimpanzees and humans?
What is it that...
What is the key?
Key to connect with chimpanzees and humans? The key factors, key elements.
Well, being quiet, being prepared to accept them on their own terms, getting a feeling for an interaction, not pushing things, Those are the kind of things. I mean, you know, I'm always like, I do quite a bit of lobbying, and I talk to CEOs of big industries and things like that. And I think the one thing that people activists do that's a mistake, they get angry, they point fingers, they shout, they tell people they're bad, and that they, you know, but people aren't then going to listen. So how do you change somebody's mind? If I'm lobbying, I always take at least 1 minute to try and get a feeling for the person. I look up ahead of time. Is there one thing that this person who's doing horrible things, like a big oil company, one thing that he and I have in common, maybe we both love dogs, something like that. And then you've got to find a way into the heart. It's no good arguing with the head of somebody like that. But sometimes if you can reach the heart. So there's one story. I was talking to a group of CEOs, and afterwards one of them came up and he said, Jane, I've been trying for the last 8 years to really get my corporation, which was an international one, ethical in the country where we get our supplies, along the supply chain, in our offices around the world, and the way we treat our customers. For 3 reasons. One, seeing the writing on the wall, seeing that in some places we're using up these finite natural resources faster than nature can replenish them. Secondly, consumer pressure. People are beginning to want to buy ethically produced products. They're beginning to say, I don't want that product because it harmed the environment. I don't want it because it was cruel to animals. I don't want it because it's cheap, because of unfair wages somewhere. So consumer pressure is making a difference. But he said what tipped the balance. My little girl of 8 came home from school one day, and she said, Daddy, they tell me that what you're doing is hurting the planet. That's not true, is it, Daddy? Because it's my planet. That did it. So that's what I mean, a story that can reach the heart.
Thank you.
Dr. Goodall, I see that we have another of your friends here in the audience. Can I invite him to the stage maybe? What's special with him?
Mr. H, I talked about the indomitable spirit. Mr. H was named for a man called Gary Horn, who gave me Mr. H for my birthday 30 years ago. And he thought he was giving me a stuffed chimpanzee for my birthday. Well, I think you can probably all tell me why this isn't a chimpanzee. However, Gary Horn was blind, and he went blind at 21. I took his hand and made him hold the tail. He said, well, never mind, take him where you go, and you know I'm with you in spirit. So what's so special about Gary Horn? That's why it's Mr. H. Well, when he was blind, he decided for some odd reason that he wanted to become a magician. Everybody said, but Gary, you can't be a magician if you're blind. Well, if he was standing here, he does his props beforehand, and he works with children. They don't know he's blind. And at the end, he'll tell them and say, something may go wrong in your life, because we never know. But if it does, don't give up. There's always a way forward. And he does skydiving and cross-country skiing and diving with sharks. But what I think is the most amazing thing, he's taught himself to paint. So he's never seen Mr. H, only felt him. And yet in this little book he's done called Blind Artist, there's a portrait of Mr. H, which is completely amazing. So that's why he's been with me to 62 countries. This is his 62nd country.
Thank you so much. Do we have time for a few more questions, maybe? A colleague, and then you. Let's collect the questions, and then we'll have the answers. Let's start from here.
Hi, my name is Yumi, and I'm also a student from International School of London. I wanted to ask, in a small school, what kind of projects can we do that protect the environment, wildlife, and their communities?
Well, that's for you to decide. You have to decide what you want to do. What do you care about? You can't do everything. So maybe you care about stray dogs. Maybe you think it'd be a good idea to plant trees. Maybe you want to clear trash. Maybe you want to raise money for refugees. Maybe you want to do something with human rights. It's what you care about, and then sitting down with your friends and discussing what you all care about and deciding what you can do, and then rolling up your sleeves and taking action.
Thank you.
There was one more question over there, and then you. Yes, you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Goodall. I'm Mahal from College of Humanities Social Sciences, Hamad Bin Khalifa University. Since your experience, you shared, we can say two parts, with chimpanzees and with humans. And my question also two parts, or cannot be separated. One is, according to your research, your experience with chimpanzees, can we say there are some fundamental differences which distinguish human from chimpanzees or from other animals, or it's just a very subjective human perception? Then, based on this, for what we can do to improve the education, improve people, to elevate them from poverty, then this is a very, we say, human-centered perspective and position. So how can we understand this center peripheral structure or relationship? Then how can we harness it to betterly to improve our accomplishment to fulfill our purpose?
Well,
Thank you very much.
The main difference, as I've said, is the explosive development of our intellect. And I believe that that came about, at least partly, because at some point in our evolution, we developed this way of speaking. So for the first time, we can teach our children or other people about things that are far away, whereas chimpanzee children learn by watching and imitating and practicing. So do our children. But we have this advantage of language. We can discuss the past. We can make plans for the distant future. We can bring people together to discuss a problem. And that is the power, I think, that gives our intellect that push. And so now we can use that intellect to make the world better. We can use that intellect to improve the situation of other animals and other people. We must use it for good. We have so often used it for bad.
Thank you very much.
There was just one right up at the back.
Yes.
She's had her hand up for hours. Right at the back and the top of it. You can shout.
Thank you very much. I'm Jamie. I'm a teacher. I'm from Colombia. I'm so happy to be here. And I have a special question for you. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous, but thanks for this chance. My question is, at the beginning of the conference, you mentioned how important was for you, like the message of a teacher in your life and all the research that you have performed. So for you, what is the role of a teacher in the 21st century, and how can we include sustainability in the curriculum, because we are in touch every day with those new generations? So could you please let us know what is, from your perspective and experience, the role of a teacher?
The role of a teacher, a parent, or I said my teacher was my dog. The role of a teacher is to mold minds, to guide people, to help people think for themselves. I think that's something that's really important, to ask questions, to listen, because a lot of teachers don't listen, they just want to preach, 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 teach, teach, teach. But the really good teachers draw a child out and help them to understand that they, as an individual, are responsible for their behavior and encourage them to get, the children have a curiosity. Just encourage that curiosity like my mother did.
Maybe one last question from the very back of our auditorium. Miss Sabika, yes.
Top step.
Oh, okay.
Getting your exercise.
Hi, Dr. Goodall. It's very nice seeing you here. I wanted to ask you, with the generation of youth and with media and so many other factors around life, with youth that are influencing them and kind of dividing them, how do you think, and what do you think can youth take away from nature, or particularly from chimpanzees, when it comes to empathy and compassion? That's it. Thank you.
I couldn't hear.
What about the compassion and empathy from the chimpanzees? What can we learn from that?
Well, chimpanzees show empathy, like an adult male will adopt a motherless infant whose mother has died and saved their life. And we show empathy, but other animals show empathy too. So we all show empathy in our own way. I mean, there's so many examples these days of different animals showing empathy towards other animals, towards humans, humans towards animals. And empathy differs according to the situation, according to the species.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goodall. I would like to leave the floor back to Dr. Leslie Powell for the closing remarks. It's been a pleasure for us to have you with us. But, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Dugu, and thank you to my colleagues in the three colleges, but particularly in College of Public Policy, Dr. Talk and Ms. Aya, and our team for organizing this wonderful event, and thank you to all of our guests. But, of course, my profound thanks to Dr. Goodall. The subtitle of this session was Science, Ethics, and Policy, but I think we were also exposed to her humanity and her wisdom and a firm and kind heart. And it's an absolute inspiration to have listened to you this morning. So on behalf of everyone here and the three colleges, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Now we have a small token of appreciation from the College of Public Policy, the College of Islamic Studies, and the College of Humanities and Social Sciences.
Please, Dr. Gali, Dr. Sophie, please join.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, now we will get you out to your driver.
Yes.